It's gonna look pretty. What's going on, guys? I'm Chris, and this is Regular Guy Training. So, I took a little bit of a break from the AR stuff. I felt like I was falling into it a little bit too hard, so, by popular request, an update on the Draco. So, this guy is dead. We got right about just under 32,000 rounds on it, and I noticed that the action was starting to slow down a little bit, to the point where it's very, very oblonged and huge at this point. So either the rifling was going to go very soon or the gas port, and the gas port decided it was going to give up. So, honestly, the only thing I can really think about, because I run a lot of AKs. I wore out a bunch of barrels on AKs, but this was the only time that I ran an AK to the point where we were pretty much at cyclic rate for a lot of its life. And I'm just assuming that they start a little over-gassed to start, really close to properly gassed, but they start a little over-gassed to start. So just a whole bunch of that, getting abused, getting really hot, getting run at that rate for the amount of time that it was for that round count. That's probably just what wore out its gas port. That's just what I can guess. As far as, whether or not it worked well, obviously it worked to the point where something important gave up first instead of a bolt or something like that. It ran, it continued to run until that gas port gave up. What I have going on here is actually a friend of mine's, and he decided he was going to turn this loose. He's like, hey, if you still got, just shoot footage that you need to do for it still, if you got to still do like night vision stuff and that kind of thing for it, I can loan this out to you for as long as I need to. So, thanks, Colton. I appreciate it. And he did that knowing full well what I do to my guns. He knows that if anything hangs around, especially me or this schoolhouse for about 2 years plus, it's either going to break or it's going to feel like it's held together with like paper clips and chewing gum and shit. What's going on with this guy? Pretty much the exact same thing as, the original that I ran, a couple of years back. And it was the same gun that you guys saw for this optic review that was on 25,000 rounds. And this optic has only lived on Draco anything. So, that's a selling point for it all by itself, minus probably a little bit of its night vision capability. The lenses aren't quite there. But as far as a day optic or a low light optic in conjunction with white light is concerned, it does totally fine in case in case people ask. So, just about identical. Only thing different is that there is an ALG increased weight spring in here. And really all that's to do is to speed up the action when it's going to lock up. So it locks up much tighter than original, so that there's no real crazy bolt bounce on it or anything like that, which you tend to get with either shorter or over-gassed AK style rifles. Some guys do that with their ARs where they get like slightly heavier buffer springs and that kind of thing, and that's most of the time because it's like suppressed, right? You want to slow down your action a little bit on the way out, but you want it to lock up really positively and under some extra speed, because when it goes forward, it's going forward with some ass. As a result, it does like mess with my brain a little bit, because, with the decreased speed going to the rear, it ejects, significantly less far than it used to. It kind of worries my brain a little bit, but it doesn't give me any problems, so I'm just kind of like, whatever. As long as it's consistent, and it is, I don't have any problems with it at all. So, there you go. Now, over this thing's life, it has done nothing but do well. It continues to be like when it starts out, you get like 2-ish minute of angle out of it, which is as far as like shot groups and that kind of stuff, which is honestly to be expected if you're doing your job. But as you start to wear it in, as you start to shoot a lot with it, especially if you do a lot of high volume stuff, and especially if you fire it at increased rates for prolonged periods of time, it's going to open up some. I've never seen a shot group at 100 larger than 4.5 though, which, if we're talking about a cold hammer forged barrel, which those aren't the tightest shooting barrels in the world to start. And if you talk about like wear patterns and that kind of stuff with different rifles, that's no different than a lot of systems that are out there. I mean, if you have, for instance, like a non-free floated handguard on an AR, for instance, like a RIS 2 or something, right? Very M4-esque. You're going to expect a very, very similar groups out of it at, like that. So I'm not saying, oh, it's just as good as an AR as far as accuracy. It's not. But it's very consistent in how it wears, and it stays controlled. It stays in a particular zone, so you can expect what there is to expect out of a gun like this at, pick a yard line, because 1, 2, 300 it does just fine. 400, like all 30 caliber AKs, it starts getting a little squirrely, and then post that you're rolling some dice. It gets pretty inconsistent because at that point, like especially past post 300, you're dealing with the trajectory of like a thrown brick. So it's still a short 30 caliber gun. All AKs really are really fancy 30-30s anyway, so that's what to expect. Not much more really to report. The thing has been boring, and that's the best possible it's the best possible compliment that I can give. There are a lot of AKs out there that are manufactured by, I don't know, pick an unknown place and pick a not Chinese, Bulgarian, Russian, or Romanian manufacturer, and they deal with all kinds of issues, right? I get asked about PSA AKs literally all the time, and what I keep telling people is I have hope for their future, but every time I see 10, 12 examples of a good one, I'll see 1 or 2 horror stories, and it makes me back up just a little bit so that I just give it a little bit more time for them to iron all their little issues out, and I think they're well on their way. But as far as all that goes, I mean, what I tell people all the time when you're selecting a manufacturer of AK, okay, you really want to stick to the big importers, honestly. And that is not in any particular order, but I do have my favorites. You have Bulgaria, China, the Ruskies, and Romania. And if I were to rate them as far as quality is concerned, like per unit, like to me, that's my tier set. Bulgaria seems to make the better AKs of the groups, especially with like their SAM series, like SAM 7, SAM 7K, whatever. There's that. I've shot the bejesus out of a milled Mac 90 to the point where I retired that thing because that's a milled gun. There is no trunnion to replace, and I replaced the barrel, enough times to where if I do it again, I start having to worry about like pin wallowing and things like that. So that thing is retired for anyone that just keeps on asking. But I have a stamped one, so yay. The Ruskies are famous for okay, good enough, and they'll send them out. They work good. They're cold hammer forged components. They work boringly, and they keep on working until you break something, which is usually quite a few cases of ammo into it. And then the Romanians, which are significantly more rough around the edges, like this gun. But the components that need to be quality are quality. They run and run and run and run and run and run and run. Iron sights are still super tight, especially the front. You're going to have to really like heave a lot of pressure into it. That's no different with this thing. But you slap an Ultimac on it and that kind of stuff. And if you have like maximum retention of your space, like if you're good at playing Tetris, you can handle this. So there's that. And let's talk about this for a second, because I know I'm going to get 100 freaking questions. This is a Holosun LS321, a Surefire Scout, and then I have a Daniel Defense Offset 1913 section that's right in front of a Midwest Industries aimpoint mount for the Holosun 515 GM. That seems to work out well for me. The reason why I have a pressure pad Velcro to this side of it is while I can reach up over the top and get it, the button is kind of stiff, and if it's real cold, you're real tired, that kind of stuff, it starts making you feel like a bitch. I'm not gonna lie, because you start pressing on it, it's like, oh my god, and it feels like your whole friggin' shoulder needs to go into it. Standard Steiner switch just got Velcro to the side of it, and oddly enough, the brick is just big enough to throw in that Velcro section, so you can press in along the side, and it works well. Well enough to, engage it consistently, coming off of reloads, getting into goofy positions, and things like that. The mount that's for the friggin', I was about to say aim point, the Holosun up here is a lower 1/3, so it can clear all this junk. And what keeps this from being the chinniest of chin welds is a riser on a CTR. It's the tallest one. And what's cool about that is just the angle in which everything gets hooked in here is that I can still pick up the irons. I looked already. And then, it's still not all that much taller. And honestly, as far as feel, it feels right about the same as like a 193 on a lot of ARs. The holdover is about the same too if you got a proper zero, because you can see it's mounted a little bit of a ways above that barrel. But as far as the holdovers, it's fairly similar. The circle dot isn't doing me a whole lot. It's not doing a whole lot of good for me. Once I get to really, really close ranges, I'm still, guesstimating, because that reticle is not for this. It's a goofy setup. It's a goofy looking setup for sure, but it all seems to work just fine. Similar to guys that like put risers on like their EOTechs and that kind of junk, and they recognize their 6 o'clock tick in their ring is not exactly accurate anymore unless you back up, more than 3 yards. So, but there's no real craziness to work out once you start to back up. A good zero is a good zero is a good zero. So there's all that. Here's the thing though, just an observation over the amount of time that I've had this. I've shot this a lot lefty, and I've shot this way more right-handed. And anybody that shoots a bunch of AK stuff, does a bunch of AK things for a particular amount of time, you'll notice you're going to lose gloves. Okay. I lost this glove today while getting the shoot footage, and this other glove was not too much further behind because, I still, I'm still outside. I still do outside soldiery things. So obviously this goes outside. We get wet. We do whatever. And then I do gun stuff with it, and I just tear things apart. So, that is what it is. But, other than that, you're not going to have any issues. So, other than that, really, I don't have much more to say. It's boring. Been boring. Stay boring. If you're on the fence, you'll do fine. Okay. I understand there's stuff circulating as far as like the brace thing and that kind of deal. I wouldn't give them too much hope on succeeding because there's a million people suing them. We could dig more into it, but I'm not going to. So instead of that, I'm going to say this. I'm going to plug all of my stuff now. In the description below, I have, the website, the Patreon, and the Facebook page. Cool. Facebook page is what it is. If you want to go check it out, check it out. They're insane in that group. Me Mondays are the greatest. Freaking. If you want to support us through Patreon, you absolutely can. It really does help. It allows me to do stuff like throw bullets at this and that kind of deal. If you want to get something out of it, $41 a month allows you to get as much training with us as you want. You just got to pay $41 a month. And when you have that, you can shoot us an email, be like, I want to sign up to things, and you can go do that. The only thing that it doesn't qualify for is like private classes and logistical nightmares like vehicle classes, and that's about it. And in addition to this, if you want to jump into, again, it's in the lower section. You can go scroll and look for it. There's a super thanks thing. If you just want to throw me, a couple of bucks for a C4, some creatine, because I swear to God, I'm thin enough to perform abortions with. You can do that and help us out. Other than that, though, that's all I really got. If you want to check out all those things, and if you want to come out and train with us, websites listed, and all of our, open enrollment stuff is there. And remember, guys, a regular guy's firearm is the last defense against tyranny. Be easy.